More people coming in.
Yes. Mariana, for some reason I cannot.
I can do it for you. There's no problem.
Okay. Good.
Martin, then I will also give you the access to change when you start. Okay.
Thank you. I guess we will be starting very soon now, eh? Just
I think it's time. It's time. So welcome everyone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this ENRICH in China webinar within our webinar series Landing Softly in China. We're sorry that the techniques allowed you to listen what we were talking beforehand, but maybe it was also useful for you and interesting. So today's webinar is about opportunities for European SMEs in China's inland. My name is Elli Stepanovic. I'm working at the Austrian Research Promotion Agency as a senior project manager, and we are also partner in the ENRICH in China network. And I'm very, very happy to welcome today Bart Horsten, who is managing director of Horsten International, which is also a soft landing zone of ENRICH in China. And welcome, Bart. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And I will say a couple of words about Bart before I turn to you participants, giving some highlights about our upcoming activities. So today's expert Bart has been entrepreneur and consultant since 1998, focusing on startup and early development projects in and with China. And he has profound and long-term expertise and an extensive network to many European companies entering the Chinese market. But you lived also in Hong Kong and in Shanghai, but you are located in Belgium now in Turnhout.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct, yes. Good
okay.
afternoon. Good morning to all of you.
So I will give some words. I will say some words about our upcoming activities before I give the floor to Bart. Currently, we have an investor call open. If you're interested, please go on our homepage. It is for companies with solutions dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic still. And on 26th of May, we have our next webinar within the series Ask the Expert. Our expert will be Wenhuan Xi'an, Secretary General of Beijing Belt and Road International Co-Incubation, and he will be answering questions posed by European SMEs and startups. It will be an interesting webinar as well. Please register for that as well. And on the 3rd of June, we'll have another webinar within the series Getting to Know China and Landing Softly in China, opportunities in Hangzhou for European companies. And after the summer break in October, to be precise, on the 20th to 22nd, our digital funding forum will take place. It will highlight funding opportunities from both sides, from Europe and from China, regarding research collaboration. In a couple of days, we will have more information and we'll have the preliminary agenda online. So be a little bit patient still. The information will be online soon. Yeah, I think that's from my side. To you participants, if you have questions regarding what I said so far or the upcoming information that Bart will give us on his presentation, please feel free to use the tool, the online tool, and post your questions in the question area. We will have a Q&A, a question and answers session after the presentation. We will do it a little bit like an interview style. Bart was so kind and agreed to letting me pop in and ask some questions, some intelligent ones, I hope, in between his presentation. So the floor is yours, Bart, and thank you once again for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Ellie, and thank you also to ENRICH in China to give me the opportunity to introduce myself and my soft landing zone and talk about mainly, of course, the main topic of today about opportunities in the inland of China. And I will also introduce some case studies, but let me first introduce myself and my company. I'll try to use the system. And if not, then Mariana, you can help me to go to the next slide. So my company has been in China already quite a number of years. As you can see there, the company itself was set up in late 1996. So next year we will celebrate our 25th anniversary. But as you can see, some old pictures there. The connection of my family to China already goes back to the early 80s. So in fact, this year it's exactly 40 years ago since my father traveled to China for the first time. At that time, he was working for a big pharmaceutical company. Maybe some of you know Janssen Pharmaceutical, but I'm sure that all of you know Johnson & Johnson. It's a big US multinational. So my father was sent out as a young guy, as a young entrepreneur working for this company to start something in China, and this led to a very, very successful pharmaceutical joint venture, one of the first Belgian companies in China, but also one of the very first pharmaceutical joint ventures in China. And it's quite particular because this company ended up in Xi'an, and Xi'an being the capital of Shaanxi province. It's still today, you will not find a lot of foreign companies in Xi'an. Let's say not too many European, but then you can imagine in the 80s, long time ago, it was even more special to set up your company in that province. This has a very special reason. I will not go in too much detail about that because that's not the purpose of today. But anyway, my father always said that one of the reasons for the success of Janssen in China was the fact that they had the local support, and especially in those days, and especially in pharmaceutical industry, you need, of course, to do a lot of regulatory activities, registration of your products. So having some local support is really, really critical. And I think, of course, apart from having good products and the good first mover advantage they had, definitely being in this location was also a plus. But as I said, I will not go too much in detail. So let's move fast forward to today, which is then our company today. The next slide. We are still a family company today. Unfortunately, my father is not there anymore. He passed away about 11 years ago. But we are still a family company. So on the top picture there, you see me and my two brothers. So we are based in Belgium. And then the rest of our team, all the others you see there, 2 Belgians and some Chinese colleagues, all of them are based in our office in Xi'an. So we're still in Xi'an, very much connected to Xi'an. We do projects basically all over China, but our base in China is Xi'an. In Belgium is our headquarters in Europe. We are near to Antwerp in a small town called Turnhout, but really providing all-round consulting services, and mostly to European SMEs, because that's our main focus, China and SMEs. On the next slide, I've introduced some of the services we provide. So it's really quite diverse, as I said. Well, definitely, if you look at China 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you can imagine it was a different country. So also the services we provide are quite different from today. So in those days, it was more about investing in China or sourcing from China, because China was still a, let's say, low manufacturing country, the factory of the world. Today, of course, most of our customers look at China as a potential market, both for consumer market, but also for their B2B activities and research and development activities. So the type of services has changed a lot. So now it's more about doing market research, helping with finding the right partner, startup services, setting up companies. So very, very diverse companies, as I said, focusing on SMEs mostly. On the next slide, just trying. Yes. Did I do it? Yeah. So we are since, let me see, 2019, the second half of 2019, yes. We have been accredited as the soft landing zone in Xi'an for ENRICH. So that means that we have a co-working space there. So our office is located there, but it's a joint initiative between Horsten Xi'an, which is our company in Xi'an, and Rocket Space, which is a co-working station in really a central location in the Xi'an high-tech zone, really top location where we have a lot of facilities. So, and on the next slides, you will see some more detailed pictures. So this is the reception when you come in. On the next slide, you see there's some office space. So as you see, there is a open office area, but also you can have your own office if you want to have more privacy, or you have a small space where you want to store some things. So there's a lot of facilities available. On the next slide, you see the meeting room and conference room. Very flexible, very, let's say, open area where you can meet a lot of local entrepreneurs, a lot of activity going on, a lot of startups. So I think it's really an inspiring location, which you find nowadays also in most big cities in China, and of course also in European cities. So it's really an inspiring environment. I think the next slide is one more showing it's more like a relax room, and you have a coffee bar there. So these are all things that you can enjoy, and if you want to find more information about it, you can click on that website. I guess Mariana or Elli, the participants will receive a copy of the presentation afterwards. Is that correct?
We will provide the presentation online, yes, for everyone. But since, as you mentioned now, these co-working spaces, how many companies are currently using these spaces, and are there also European SMEs entering your facilities and renting?
So yes, the pictures you saw in the previous slides, they are all taken on the 5th floor. But in fact, it's a building, and the entire space is from 5th to 8th floor, so different floors. All meeting rooms and let's say the community facilities are on the 5th floor, but then mostly separate offices you can find in other floors. Altogether, I don't know how many exactly, but it's several dozens of companies. As I said, all very small startup companies, but most of them are Chinese. We have some Korean, Japanese, so mostly from other Southeast Asian countries, not so much from Europe. And as far as I know, not even one single European company is there yet. So that actually is a demonstration of the big step coming to Xi'an, because I mean, I've been a privileged witness myself for the past 22 years now, and I've seen that for SMEs going to China, it's already a huge step to make this decision to come to China as an investor, but also for business development. But then taking the next step to go to Xi'an is even a bigger step. So that's definitely something where Xi'an, but this goes for most or many inland cities in China, they are still struggling to first of all get more well known in European markets, because, well, I'm sure most of you have heard about Xi'an because it's a historical city. It's the ancient capital of China. Maybe some of you have heard about Chengdu, which is also a very fast developing city in China. But I'm sure there's many cities in China which a lot of European companies have never heard about. So definitely that's a lack of awareness in European markets. So that's why we have this session today. But so as far as I know, today there is no European company with an actual presence in our soft landing zone. But of course, that doesn't mean that we are not helping European companies, because the soft landing zone is not necessarily only about renting co-working space. It's also about providing soft landing services, so all kinds of services for European SMEs to get started in Xi'an or in China as a whole. Okay, I guess. Let's see. Still struggling with the moving to the next slide. So, Marianne? So anyway, I'll continue about Xi'an. So as I said, Xi'an has been, so this is on the next slide. I will now talk about what I was actually already talking about, is the challenges you have when going to China. So usually when companies go to China and buy a ticket to go to China, well, it's a very practical reason. If you, from any international airport in Europe, if you buy a ticket to China, most likely you will go to Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou. There's also flights to a few different cities in China, but let's say I'm sure that 90% of Europeans traveling to China, they will first go to Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, which is of course also the coastal area of China, which is by far the most developed. So if you're planning to sell your products to China, or you want to set up a research cooperation or with a local research institute or university, there's a good chance that you'll end up somewhere in one of those big cities. And you see on the slide, I talk about first tier cities and second and third tier cities. So I don't know if you're familiar with this tier system in China, but it's not an official government system. I mean, it's not a classification which is officially used by the government, but typically when we talk about the different cities in China, we use this system of tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3. And so tier 1 are the biggest and most well-known cities like Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou. And then you have tier 2, which are usually capital cities of provinces. And then you have tier 3 and tier 4 cities, which are more smaller cities. Now, if I say smaller cities, clearly this is still not very small. So most of these cities have 1 million inhabitants or even more. If I, for example, Xi'an or Chengdu, those cities are also very, very big cities with can be up to 10 million people living there. So it's really, really a big market itself. And as you can see there on the slide on the left, so these first tier cities like Shanghai, Beijing, they're very well developed. If you talk to people there, you will see that many of them already can speak English quite fluently. So you have it's an easier way of doing business or communicating. Of course, there's already many foreigners living there. Many foreign companies have set up in China, in Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou. So you have a lot of international exposure, a lot of events happening there. So it's let's say living in Shanghai, for example, is really nice. You have a nice foreign community and a lot of well-trained staff. But unfortunately, this also goes with a lot of competition and very, very high costs. So today, if you want to set up a company in China, in Shanghai, or open a shop in Shanghai in a top location, or you want to hire really high qualified or high management staff in Shanghai or Beijing, you will definitely pay a lot, even more than if you are working with a foreigner in China, or even they get paid better than salaries here in Europe. So it's really not to be underestimated. Additionally, when you want to work with a local partner there, well, as I said, the whole world is coming there. So, for example, if you are traveling to China and you end up in Shanghai, you will meet with all your European competitors in Shanghai. But at the same time, I guess there's a good chance you will also meet with American companies, Australian companies, Japanese, Koreans, but also more and more Chinese. So it's really a big, tough battle. So that's why I say, why don't you also have a look at second and third tier cities? First of all,
they do get more attention now and importance also from the Chinese government, right? And I mean, and Xi'an as a starting point of the new Silk Road, I think it's even more in the spotlight, I think.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm sure most of you have already heard about Go West policy. And now everybody talks about Belt and Road Initiative, but ever since I was doing business with China, so starting from the late 90s, the early years 2000, you could always read about Go West, Go West. So meaning the Chinese government trying to promote or stimulate Chinese companies, but also foreign companies to invest in the west of China. But between us, they have not really been very successful with this in the years 2000 or the early years 2010. It's only that I think the last 5-6 years, it's really, you see something's happening, and of course, in particular, thanks to the Belt and Road Initiative, where indeed the Chinese government is really spending a lot of money and giving a lot of attention to developing the west of China, because, well, as I said, there's also very big cities there. The consumers is growing fast. Also, the middle class there is increasing. So that's why the advantages you have there is indeed if you look at the growth rates. So I'm not showing you any statistics today because you can find a lot of information about that. But so these markets are really growing faster than first-tier cities. They're very, very eager to work with European SMEs. So they're really open for business. As I explained, competition there is less than in the big cities. And you get a lot of support from local governments. I will talk about it in a minute, indeed, also about the funding and subsidy programs. Unfortunately, they are not so familiar with doing business with foreigners, so the ease of doing business is a little bit less there. So you'll find this more typical Chinese way of doing business, which is not necessarily bad, but it's if you're not used to it, you need to get acquainted with it. So you may need some help. Also, the skills of for example, language are less. So yeah, they need some time, and so probably setting up there, you need to spend more time. But then I think it's much easier to find a committed partner. As I said, if you find a partner or a distributor in Shanghai, probably you're number 15 on the list. Whereas if you go to a second-tier city, you may end up as a number 1 on the list. Yes, maybe they are smaller, and yes, they need more time to develop your business, and the communication is maybe less easy. But definitely, once you have a committed partner, I think it can also be a very good partner for your China business. Okay, let me then go to the next slide. So I don't know, before we talk about Xi'an, but maybe you want to know where it is. So it's really, if you look at the map of China, it's quite centrally located. If you can see clearly, you will find also Chengdu, Chongqing, and Wuhan, some other cities in the inland of China. So it's of course also very, very big, but it's quite easy to go there because of course nowadays with the fast train connections, you can get from Beijing to Xi'an by train, I think 4 hours or so. By plane, it's 1 hour and 15 minutes. It's about the same, a little bit more to Shanghai, so it's quite well connected, of course. And Xi'an also has an international airport, and you can even fly there directly from Europe. I think, if I'm not mistaken, from Helsinki and from Paris, there's direct connections. Maybe more coming in the future. You already mentioned it before, Elli, the Xi'an being on the next slide, the ancient capital of China and the ending point of the Silk Road. So the ancient Silk Road was, of course, a very, very important trading channel in the old days, in the Middle Ages. But Xi'an being the ancient capital of China, in fact, actually the very first capital of the United China, the first emperor of China was based in Xi'an. So still today, as a tourist, you can find a lot of very interesting spots in Xi'an. Of course, most people will know the terracotta soldiers, which is the famous terracotta army of the Emperor Qin. But in fact, Xi'an was the center of 13 different dynasties in Xi'an. So it's a very ancient city with a very nice old city wall, but also a very modern city, because in the past years, a lot of investments have been done. So don't think Xi'an is some kind of old city in China. No, if you go there, you will be amazed how modern the city is. And today, of course, it's one of the key hubs in the inland of China for the development of the new Silk Road, also called the Belt and Road Initiative. So there's a lot of opportunities there you can have. And on the next slide, you can see what I explained, the connection from Xi'an to different locations in China by speed train. speed train or by flight. So it's really well connected, and more we see that rail transportation is getting a lot of boost, especially now also during the COVID-19 outbreak. You may have heard that there was a lot of problems of getting your products in and out by plane due to safety restrictions and different reasons. And we have seen a huge boost on train transportation from both Europe to China or China to Europe, so eastbound and westbound. So definitely also this is then well, good news for Xi'an, because it's quite centrally located in the middle of China, with good connections nowadays to the western part of China, but also all the way to Europe. So on the next slide, another reason for choosing Xi'an, maybe being the ancient capital of China, but also in the history of the modern China, the People's Republic of China, Xi'an has taken a very important role, because the end of the Long March ended up not so far from Xi'an, and also President Xi, of course, has some link to the Shaanxi province. So in the past 50 years, Xi'an has built up a strong presence in universities and research institutes. So in fact, the Xi'an is the number 3 in China, behind Beijing and Shanghai, as far as the number of students is concerned, and science and technology research institutions. So definitely, if you're in research or technology development, definitely you need to also find some time to pay a visit to Xi'an, because there's a lot of interesting research institutes, and as I said, they're very open to do business with you, because they're really in China the top 1 or top 3 universities you can find there. So that also means that you find a huge number of very qualified people there. So university graduates, engineers, different levels, but at affordable cost. So I don't know if it's clear to you, but there you see there the numbers of the different universities. So altogether, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, more than 70,000 students in all these different universities. And so there's really a pool of talented people you can find there. On the next slide, I've added a few other advantages of Xi'an. So as I said, there is a population of about 8 million people. But if you look at the entire area there, it's almost 13 million people, so it's quite a lot. As I said, with a growing middle class, of course, let's say the general standard of living in Xi'an is less than in other first-tier cities, but definitely there is already quite an important middle class. So as a foreign or European SME, you can definitely also find a lot of interesting consumers there. I mentioned already the Go West strategy, or the Belt and Road Initiative. So China also has every 5 years a 5-year plan, and so Xi'an has also taken a very important role in this 5-year plan of the Chinese government, being the Chinese window to the West. And as I said, so all the other reasons you can see there for developing a business in China, or at least in Xi'an, or at least having a look at Xi'an as well. So the cost of living in other cities, consumption is growing in second and third tier cities. Xi'an is a very important industrial base, as I said, because of this historical importance of the city of Xi'an. A lot of very important industrial activities have been set up in Xi'an. So you should look back in the beginning of the setting up of the People's Republic of China. China had a lot of enemies, and Xi'an, being a central location, it was very far from the border with the Soviet Union, Japan, USA. So that's why they chose Xi'an as a central location to double certain key industries, like military, for example, or aviation or automotive. So that's why today you have some top industries located in some of the industrial zones in Xi'an. So definitely also in intelligent manufacturing and materials, new materials, IT, software. you have a lot of military industry, as I said. I think the engine of the first aerospace, which has been sent to space from Xi'an, from China, has been made in Xi'an. So you have a really very important industrial base there. The key sectors you can see there: electronics, microelectronics, bioengineering, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and different industries. So definitely, if you're in one of those industries, you can definitely have a look at Xi'an. And then there's also a lot of subsidies and funding plans. So I can give you more details about that. So I have not mentioned it here, but it's both for small and medium-sized companies, also for large companies, but even for individuals. So sometimes if you want to apply for some subsidies or fundings in Xi'an, sometimes the requirement will be that you have to set up a company in Xi'an or set up a kind of a cooperation with a local company. And there's some other requirements or conditions sometimes, but so you can get, of course, tax benefits, but then also really fundings for research programs or even subsidies. So if you want to have more information about that, please let me know, and then I can send you more information about that. Okay, I don't know, Elli, should we look into some of the questions, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so if an SME considered to enter the Chinese market through Xi'an, you as Bart International would be there to support, to give advice, to give access to your network and yes, consult. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, usually what we do is, well, first of all, we do not only help companies that want to come to Xi'an. First of all, we look at, okay, what is exactly your business? What is your objective? So then we will, if needed, do some market research, look at your strategy. Do you have already some experience in doing business with China? And then we will really tailor-made try to help you to find the right partner, set up the company if needed, help you with the entry modes, and if you need a local partner in Xi'an or in China, but specifically then in Xi'an, we of course have quite good connections with both city government, provincial governments, but also with local CEOs and research institute, universities. So you name it, we can help you to build the contacts there, in, as I said, in the different industries mentioned on the slide. So yes, that's what we do basically. We have the team there, so we have both English and Dutch and French and Chinese speaking staff, and probably some other languages as well. So we can help European SMEs indeed to get connected in Xi'an.
If you don't mind, I would look at one or two questions, if you don't mind, Bart. There is one participant who says, which changes do you observe due to the COVID-19 situation in business habits and trends? Is there an impact also regarding e-commerce, and what's your advice about this field for beginners?
Yes. Well, yes. First of all, maybe talking about e-commerce is an interesting topic. And we talked about the difference between first-tier cities and second-tier cities. So what we see is that, in fact, the growth rates for e-commerce are quite big well, especially in countryside and smaller cities, because, well, anybody who has been to China before will know that if you're in Shanghai or in Beijing, you find a lot of shopping malls there. Everything is, I mean, basically, I still remember the times when I didn't even have a chance to find a decent coffee in China. Anywhere I would go, maybe just in some exclusive hotels, 5-star hotels, yes, but then for the rest, no coffee to be found. Today, if you're in China, you'll find coffee on every street corner, basically. But if you're in a smaller city, then of course the availability of those products is not so well as in a bigger city. So that's why a lot of citizens in smaller towns in China will use e-commerce to buy products. And now in the COVID-19 crisis, indeed, we have seen another boost of e-commerce. because of course a lot of people were basically locked down in their rooms or their apartments. And you know, many Chinese people, they live in apartment blocks and they don't have their own house with a garden. So they were forced to work with, to buy products on e-commerce even more than before, because before e-commerce is of course already quite big in China. It's even the biggest e-commerce market in the world. But then now the COVID crisis, I think, has even boosted this. So definitely there are a lot of opportunities for European companies to do business in China through e-commerce. Often it's an interesting starting point, because depending on which platform you choose, it can be Alibaba, but there's also many other smaller platforms. So it really depends on the business you're in. So of course today we have a very diverse audience, so it's difficult to go into much detail, but I think what you need to do is not only look at whether your product can be sold on e-commerce and then select the right platform. It can also be, there's a difference in domestic platforms, so meaning platforms which only allow companies with legal entity in China to sell. It can be your own company, or it can be a distributor or a partner you have. But there's also this cross-border channel. So there you also have different platforms. Cross-border means that it is only allowed for foreign companies without a legal entity in China. So there you have a really B2C directly to Chinese consumers. But you should also consider about social media, because it's all about marketing in China. Today, if you want to be successful in China, supposing you have a consumer product, or it can also be, so then of course you need to focus a lot on marketing, and it can be quite, it's very different, because all the platforms, all the applications are different in China. So you need to really make sure you choose the right ones and be active on platforms or social media platforms like WeChat or Weibo. So, and we have seen a boost even more than it was before. Today, the e-commerce is even more important in China.
Thank you, Bart. Are you okay if we have one question still before you go into the cases? There is one question left. It says, please, do you have any advice regarding NDAs? Are these non-disclosure agreements, I suppose, and partnership agreements with Chinese companies? Do you have experience in this field?
Yes. Let's say, again, I will maybe a little bit difficult to go too much in detail, but basically, of course, now we're talking about confidentiality. So we're talking also about intellectual property, for example. So first of all, I think it's important to say that if you're doing business with a Chinese company today, I think Chinese companies also consider the importance of intellectual property. It used to be a problem. In some cases, it still is today. But I would say that a possible risk of intellectual property should not be a reason for you not to go to China. Or to say it differently, I think you need to be aware of it, that there's always a chance that there will be a Chinese company copying your technology. But basically, this is no different from if you're going to any other country. So I think you need a lot of common sense. You need to take your time to get to know your partner. And indeed, your contracts need to be in place. So this means indeed a non-disclosure agreement. And then any other, it can be a distribution agreement or technology cooperation agreement or supply agreement or whatever. So it should be in place. It should be in English and in Chinese. So making sure that your Chinese partner very well understand it, that there's no inconsistency between English and Chinese, because officially Chinese is the only official language in China. So if you have a contract only in English, it doesn't make sense. So there are, of course, still concerns and some possible risk if you share intellectual property with your Chinese partner. But I think it's not only, as I said, it's not only about the contracts. You need to have a good contract in place, but then even more important, as far as I'm concerned, is to build a relationship, build the trust, take your time to go to China, to get to know your Chinese partner better, follow up, not after having signed a contract, don't think, okay, now everything is in place, let's start. No, in China, it doesn't work like this. You really need to spend your time. I mean, even if you're in Shanghai, it's okay. As I said in the beginning, we see that people in first-tier cities in China, the way they do business is more the Western style of doing business, but it's still very much Chinese. So don't be surprised that although you will not be seeing it on the surface, even in cities like Xi'an, you have also now more and more well-trained people and more professional people. But then never forget about what is happening behind the scenes, because there is still this traditional way of doing business in China. So there's always somebody behind the scenes looking at the project. It can be a government official or a labor union person or whatever. They all have their connections, so it's always there. So this spider web of connections or relationships in China will always be there, whether you're in Shanghai or in Beijing or in Xi'an. So I think you need to really spend time to get to know your partner and build the trust. Because I'm not a lawyer, of course, but I always, when I talk about intellectual property protection or confidentiality, I always like to say, don't forget about the contract, but also look a little bit further than that. Okay, any more questions? Okay. Or if not, then I can maybe move to the next part. Yes, I think this brings us to the case studies. It's okay, I start with the case studies?
Sure.
Yeah, so I have prepared two. So I'm looking at the time so that we're still on track, so it should be okay. So I will present two case studies briefly. One of them is in pharmaceutical packaging. The second one is more in medical applications. This project already goes back quite a number of years. Remember, in the very beginning of my presentation, I was talking about this pharmaceutical joint venture called Xi'an Janssen. This company is actually a supplier of Janssen in Belgium. So it's also a Belgian company, which has been supplying to Janssen for many, many years here in Europe. But then after the factory was set up in Xi'an in the 80s, this company also needed some high quality pharmaceutical packaging, more in particular aluminum tubes. So these are the tubes which are used to pack, for example, pharmaceutical cream. It can also be a cosmetic product, a skincare product, for example. So this company started their first negotiations in the late 90s, I think around 96, 97. So of course, my father was very much involved in the project because, as you remember, starting from 1996, he was an independent consultant, so he was helping this company to get started. In the end, there was a joint venture set up. The Belgian shareholder has 44%. And today, we are a company with almost 160 people producing in Xi'an, very successfully, very profitable. On the next slide, you'll see some more details. I have been a shareholder, by the way, and also director of the company. And here you see some of the products. So these are typically the tubes they manufacture. So different designs, different sizes, different diameters, different kinds of nozzles or caps. And so you may wonder, is there something inside? But in fact, it's not. So you'll see the empty aluminum pipe, and on the bottom side, it will be open. So then it will be sent to the pharmaceutical company, and then it will be filled from the backside. And so that's why we have to be close to our customer. And Xi'an Janssen being the only customer in the beginning, it was, of course, from a logistic point of view, very easy because we could just send the goods by truck. And within half an hour, the goods were delivered to the customer. Today, I think on the next slide, today the company is already existing for 20 years. So last year in May, we celebrated the 20-year anniversary, and our Mariana. So here you see some pictures of the last year's celebrations. So me being a director, and then you see also some people there, some other Belgian directors. And we had a big celebration with our Chinese partners. On the next slide, you will see the situation today. So we are quite successful, and I think it's also important or interesting to know that thanks to the location in Xi'an, so we set up in '99, if I'm not mistaken, the first 10 years of our existence, we paid almost zero tax, or maximum, I think, 10%. So because we get some tax privileges being in the west of China, so we enjoyed this Go West policy. But even still today, so 20 years later, we are still paying only 15%, because I don't know if you know, but the normal CIT stands for corporate income tax. So normally Chinese company will pay 25% income tax, but in China, in Xi'an, we managed to get a high tax status, and you can get this, I think, each time for 3 years. So you need to do an application every 3 years, but we managed to get this status already quite a few years, and so that's why we enjoy also a preferential rate of only 15%. As I said, our biggest customer is Xi'an Janssen, but still today 90% of the sales are in mainland China, and I think we can say we're not the biggest one, but as far as the high-end quality tube manufacturing, we are definitely the #1 in China. We have top state-of-the-art production lines installed from Germany, and next year we will be starting or installing the 4th production line, so we will then increase the capacity with another 30%. Now, maybe important or most important on the next slide, what has then really been the key success factors. So I already mentioned that we are close to the main customer, which is of course one of the reasons for us to choose Xi'an as a location. But today we're selling basically all over China, so Xi'an still has this quite well-established infrastructure network. As I said, by train, by truck, by plane, you can reach, let's say, the most developed part of China within a 2-hour range. So it's I think a good location to have your production set up. But of course, we also have the advantage of getting tax privileges thanks to the Go West policies. I already mentioned before that the salaries, also the cost of utilities and other costs in Xi'an are much less than in more developed areas. Not to forget, talking about human resources, it's quite amazing that the management team of Xi'an T-Boat, so we started in '99. Today, almost 21 years later, still 90% of the team which were there in the very beginning are still there today. So we have almost no problem with relocating people, or so they are very loyal. So this is also, I think, a big advantage when you're located in a city like Xi'an. There's less competition on human resources as well. Okay, that's the first case study. I don't know if there's any new questions coming. If not, then I can continue the next case study. This is is that okay, Elli? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a company called Xi'an. It's also a Belgian company, set up in 1959, also family owned. I think their yearly turnover is about 12 to 13 million, so it's an SME. They are manufacturing high-tech filaments for different purposes. Their biggest market is actually in sports, but they also their products are also used for medical and industrial applications. I will show you a few examples in a minute. We are working for this company only for their medical division, so we're not involved in the sports or industrial applications, at least not yet. And why medical? Because there's still a lot of opportunity. So we did a market research for this company, and there's still a lot of opportunity in China, because what we've seen is that the level of sophistication in China is increasing, and we see the same thing with the aluminum tubes. So previously, so we have if you look at the total market in China for tube business, but also for this company, we only let's say there's a big market for, let's say, middle-level quality products. But we see now is that the requirements from the Chinese market are also increasing, because the level of, I mean, the level of sophistication in China is increasing. The expectations from the market is rising. And so that means also, especially in pharmaceutical and medical applications, our customers, because for Luxilon and for Xi'an, these both companies, their customers are, it's of course a B2B company, so their customers are also active in medical field or in pharmaceutical. So of course, forced by the Chinese government, they also need to rise up their quality levels. So that means also it's good news for European companies that can provide these high-end products. So Luxilon is one of them. So they're doing a lot of different research and development projects in antibacterial and also biodegradable polymers, but I will not go into detail there. And they're active globally. And on the next slide, you can see some examples of products. So most well-known is the sports business. And in fact, I'm sure most of you have heard about a company called Wilson. So Wilson tennis rackets, and I guess badminton and other sports as well. So Luxilon, so if you have ever played with a Wilson tennis racket, there's a good chance that you were using Luxilon strings, because I think in the top 10 and of women's and female and male tennis federation, like players like Federer, and so all of the big names, I think the 80% of the top 10 players in the world use Luxilon strings. So it's quite a successful but not so famous company. But as I said, we are not focusing on the sports business. We are only focusing on the medical. And so the medical application, you can see one example. So it's for operation or for sutures. So that's where we are focusing on. Industrial applications is for can be for automotive or for textiles, for aerospace. So also different applications there. But for China, on the next slide, we're only focusing on the medical side. So the sports business, there they just follow their customers. So Wilson is selling their products in China. So then Luxilon is following their footsteps, basically. Maybe there's those opportunities also differently, because of course in China, for example, badminton is a important sport. So they're also they're looking at, but we are only focusing on the medical side. On the next slide, Mariana, you can I've identified there. So we chose the direct export model. So for Luxilon Medical, I think basically you could say that if you look at the total medical market for Luxilon in China, maybe you have about 500 potential customers. However, out of these 500, maybe there are only about, let's say, 100 to 200 maximum real potential customers for Luxilon, because these 100 or 200 companies are middle to high level customers who are really in need of high quality materials from Luxilon. So that's also where we are focusing on. So in fact, after doing the investigation, it was decided that we do not work with the distributor. We will deal with the companies directly. So there's a direct export. So there's no in-between agent or distributor. There's a direct connection between, on one side, Luxilon Belgium and the Chinese customers, because as I said, there's only a potential pool of customers of about 100 to 150 or so. However, it's easy to say we don't need a distributor, we don't need an agent, but then at least you need somebody in between to help with communication. Because I'm sure if you have ever had any experience in dealing with Chinese, especially if it's not in the big cities, you will find that there's often communication problems. So it's always good to have somebody in the Chinese time zone, because it's easy for communication. Then also somebody who can communicate in Chinese. So that's why they were looking for a solution, and that's how we ended up working with them. So on the next slide, you can see what we have been doing. So first of all, of course, very important, which I would definitely recommend to all of you, before you enter China, at least you need to find whether there is any market for your products. So at least you need to know the market. And if I say know the market, I do not only mean the market itself, but I also mean your potential customer or your consumer. What are the consumer's expectations? Because there's a good chance that they have different expectations than anywhere else in the world. It can be the size of your product, the taste of your product, the packaging of your product. So there's different reasons. So you need to know what are my consumers or customers' expectations, both in B2B as well as B2C. So you need to look at who is the competition. It can be foreign competitors. Are there any of your foreign competitors already active in China? How did they do it? Are they successful? Why? Are they not so successful? Why not? So you really need to know. You also need to look at whether there's any Chinese competitors, but because more and more in many different sectors, you will find more and more Chinese competitors who are also very strong, and of course they know the market because they are in China. So that's why I think you need to do a lot of investigation and then decide on your strategy, your market entry strategy. And once you have made the decision, then you can get started. So as I explained, it was decided that we, so one of our colleagues in our Xi'an office is currently already since more than 2 years now, I think even 3 years now. He is the part-time project manager for Xi'an Medical in China. So that means that he even carries a name card of our customer. And so he is the one to represent the customer whenever there's any communication, whenever there's any exhibition. Also when the Belgian sales manager visits China, my colleague will also join him and help with traveling and communication and translation. So in this way, it's a very easy way for Xi'an. On one side, they don't have their own legal entity in China, but still they are present in China. And this has been, I think, a key important factor for their success in China. So of course, we need to look at the challenges on the next slide. This doesn't mean that it's all that easy. One of the problems is that they have quite a long sales process. So because we're in the medical field, I mean, it's not like if you sell furniture or you sell Belgian beer, you find a customer, they place the order, and a few months later they get the product delivered, and that's it. No registration, no whatever regulatory process you need to go through. Of course, in medical field it's different. So often it takes about 2 years even for a company to, for example, I mentioned sutures. So this is a product which is used by, so our customers or Xi'an's customers are companies that manufacture sutures. So when they change some of the materials, they need to go through the FDA approval in China. So it can take 1 to 2 years. So the first 2 years you start selling small quantities, small orders. So then only after 2 or 2.5 or 3 years, then the volumes will go up. So you need to find a way to bridge this long time period. So that's why the solution we found to having a part-time manager in China without taking the risk of having your own legal entity, your own staff in China, it can be quite risky, because if it fails, then you have to close down. So it can be quite costly. So that's why we found this solution of having them creating some kind of presence in China without all the big decisions to be made today. Of course, next year, we expect then the first real big orders coming in. And then that's the advantage of medical. Once you're in, it's very difficult for your customer to change. So that's why once we get in, and there's now the end of this year and next year, I think we will have the major breakthroughs. So then we will be basically in for many years to come. And then it's probably a good time to set up a legal entity in China with your own sales staff in China. So in this way, we help the customer to really get started in China. Basically, yeah. So maybe it's also maybe not unimportant to mention is that like Xi'an or like the Thibaut project I just introduced, these companies are all in a very specific niche industry. So I know that in Europe, there's a lot of SMEs who are active in a certain niche industry. So it's really important that you need to look at China, because for some big technologies or big products, China is probably not waiting for us anymore, because there's already a lot available in China. but so the big companies, the multinational companies already available in China or present in China. But China is still asking for a lot of interesting technologies from Europe. So I'm convinced that if you're in a certain niche industry and you have something unique to offer, can be unique product, unique technology, I'm convinced that there's still a lot of information, a lot of potential in China. But indeed, you need to find the partner, or you need to find the right strategy. So that's why I think it's very important to try to work with can be consultants, but you can also contact with your some government agencies in your home country. Of course, a lot of them have also representations in China. You need to talk to industry professionals or companies with experience in China. Of course, ENRICH is also there to help you. There's chambers of commerce. So that's why I think you should really talk to all these people to try to find market information in China and find a way to also have some local presence in China, which means some third-party company like ours, but also you need to go to China yourself on a regular basis, because if you're not there on a regular basis, it doesn't work either. Okay, I think maybe one more thing on the next slide. I think that will be my final slide before I can make some conclusions. I also think it's interesting to show you this. I talked about it very briefly before. WeChat. So this company, we set up a WeChat account for them. So it's like a WeChat official account. So it's like a kind of a fake Facebook page, but then on WeChat. We use it as a kind of a mini website. So we don't really put a lot of new content there all the time because it's not really a marketing company. But nevertheless, we decided to set up this WeChat account. Although it's a B2B company, it's really not very sexy, the product. But as you see there, I don't know if it's clear on the picture, but every time when there's an exhibition, usually it's twice a year, we will show this QR code. You see there on the display. It can be on a banner or next to the samples. And then it's quite amazing to see that all visitors coming to your booth, they will scan the QR code, and then immediately they will be able to see information about your company in Chinese on WeChat. And this is a very interesting way to keep connected or keep your followers engaged, because once they scan the QR code, you will be connected, they will be your follower. And instead of sending emails and newsletters to your Chinese contacts, which most likely none of them will read, all of them will read your content on WeChat. So that's why often we recommend companies forget about setting up a website and spending money to make a nice website in Chinese. It's better to use a Chinese platform like WeChat to have a more visibility in China, inside the Great Firewall of China. And for Xi'an, we did it, and now it's really a very interesting tool to communicate with all the followers, because all of them are in the base in the same industry. Okay. Any questions? Or
thank you, Bart. Yes, there is one. It says, would you recommend any marketing and relationship management activities before actually entering China? Is there some homework that can be done before, or is it to contact you and see what steps can be prepared, let's say?
Well, contact me, of course, is also an option, but I would say if you have never been to China, I think it's better to plan a trip to China and not just buy a ticket. For example, today is okay. In Corona times, it's maybe a little bit difficult, but suppose today is middle of May, and you plan a trip 1st of September. So we have another 2.5–3 months to go. So what I would definitely recommend you is make a, like I say, a 6 months plan. So the first 2 months, you try to spend time to do a desk research. You can do it yourself. You can ask somebody, if needed, maybe somebody who can speak Chinese, or you can ask an external consultant, or like I said, ENRICH or Chamber of Commerce or government agency. Some of it is free of charge, some of it because you need to pay. So take 2 months to prepare. Then the visit itself should indeed try to make it as efficient as possible, not for just 1 or 2 days, because unfortunately I sometimes see people traveling to China for 3 days. So I think you need at least a week, maybe even better, 2 weeks. So plan your trip well. Maybe you can fill your agenda the first 2–3 days, but keep some space in your agenda so that you can even have some repeat meetings, or because in China, once you're there, things change very fast. So then make the visit as efficient as possible. But as I said, it should be a 6 months plan, because you should also already plan the next visit. So when you're coming back, because that's often a reason for failure. So we see companies going to China, not so well prepared. Then during the visit in China, they have very interesting meetings. But then when they go back home, they're too busy with other things, and then they forget about China. And then the Chinese contact is waiting for feedback, or nothing happens, and then all your efforts have been wasted because there's no follow-up. So that's why I say you should have a 6 months plan, and then of course you should give it a chance and not just give up after the first problem. So that's definitely, is that an answer to the question?
Definitely. You were talking also before about trust and finding a trustworthy partner. What tip would you give to how to identify a trustworthy partner or distributor in China?
Yes. So there are definitely ways to also double check your potential partner. So what I always say is, so of course you can go to exhibitions, you can go to China, so then you will have a list of potential partners, right? You can find yourself, you can ask external help to look for, let's say, a long list of about 10 potential partners. So that's the first step. Then what you need to do is do some screening or background checks. And a lot of people actually don't know, but there's a lot of free tools to do that. Because of course I'm a consultant, so maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but in fact there's a lot of free tools. So you can maybe sometimes it's only in Chinese, but in fact it's really not difficult. So you can check the business license of the company, who are the shareholders, what's their track record, are they on any blacklisted company, or is there any problem with the company before? Maybe not so much on financials, because that's not so easy to get. It's not publicly available in China, but let's say a lot of the basic information you can already find. Then you should also ask the company. I mean, if you have a partner who's really willing to work with you, then they should be also transparent. And if you ask questions like, do you have any cooperations with any foreign companies or research institutes? If so, please give us information. Or do you have any export business or whatever? You can ask questions, and if they're not willing to answer these questions, then maybe there is already a problem. And so that's the second way. So check information, which is free of charge, and you can find on different information sources. Then just talk to them and ask them about it. And if they're not willing to answer, then it's already a sign of maybe not trusting them. And then thirdly, of course, maybe the most important one is indeed spend the time to go there and meet with them and talk to them face to face, and then build a relationship and have a dinner and get drunk together, maybe even, so to get to know them better. And so I think then talk about the objectives of your cooperation clearly, make a good contract, and not sign a contract and then start negotiating. No, it's better to talk about all the aspects of the contract before starting before signing the contract. So take your time. I think that's maybe the most important recommendation.
Thank you, Bart. If you don't mind, we have 5 minutes still. There is one last question I think we can answer, and then we're done. There is one participant asking, which advice do you formulate so that SMEs can face with the need of following Chinese trends and this watchdog activity? Yeah, so to say, staying modern, fashion, attractive for the Chinese consumer. Should a company use other strategies to stay attractive for the Chinese consumer than usual ones? Do you see this very, very quickly changing trends and all this rapid development? Is there something that you could advise, or just just
yes. So, yeah, it's not so easy to answer, but basically, indeed, China is developing so fast. Maybe that's even one of my biggest problems, because I'm supposed to know how things work in China as a consultant, helping European SMEs. But typically, a consultant is supposed to know the answer, right? So if you ask me what is needed to set up a company in China, or to do this or to do that in China, I can give you an answer. But actually, I should also always add that but it really depends on where you are in China. So so the legal system in China is in place, but the local situation can still be different. Also, what is true today indeed can be different tomorrow. So that's why I think indeed you need to have this flexibility to change your business plan. So it's always good to say, okay, I don't know, maybe if Mariana, if you can go back to the one but last slide. So I think you need to be prepared to say, okay, let's find an entry strategy for China. So based on the market research and competitive analysis and doing some learnings and then visiting China. So in the end, you end up with a market entry strategy. Then I would always suggest, especially for European SMEs, because I'm sure that most of you don't have a few million in your pocket. So you need to make a decision to say, okay, let's do a step-by-step approach. So for example, we choose one segment, one market segment, for example, only medical, or we choose one city. We can start in Xi'an or we can start in Shanghai. So it's up to you. You need to decide. If you start in Xi'an, okay, it maybe takes a little bit more time, but once you are successful in Xi'an, then it's the next step, you go to Shanghai. So you being in Xi'an can give you the chance to learn and to adjust. So if it works, you can build from that. If it doesn't work, you can try to find out what's the reasons for the problem, and then try to improve it. So that's, I think, this flexibility. I mentioned it there, the try and success approach. So you need to be perseverant. So don't give up after a few months if it doesn't work. You need to also indeed convince your boss that it takes a little bit more time in doing business in China. So we need to be patient and build on the relationships. I think it's all there. And indeed, try to find a way to enter China and then develop it step by step. And then if things change, go one step back and then try to find a solution. So this is really the biggest challenge in China, indeed, this flexibility.
Thank you very much, Bart. I think we have gone through all the questions so far. I can't see any more questions we wouldn't have answered. So yeah, it stays to thank you again very much. So the presentations, as mentioned, the presentation will be available online, and yeah, through the network, or you have also here the contact data of Bart. You can contact us and stay in touch with us, and yeah, hopefully we will see you in one of our next webinars again. And yeah, stay healthy, stay tuned, and thank you very much, Bart, for being with us today. Maybe we'll see you in one of another webinar in the near future again.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time and your efforts.
Bye.
And thank you for the technical framework, Mariana, in the background.
Thank you both.
Thanks a lot.
And thanks to everyone that attended.
Thank you very much. Bye bye, everyone.
Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.